Hail traveler, and welcome to the Strataugury basic gameplay tutorial. You may call me the Fatebringer, and I am here to teach you how to play Strataugury, an epic fantasy dueling card game that utilizes just a deck of standard playing cards. This game does require the Strataugury manual to play in full, so visit Strataugury.com if you find yourself intrigued. For the sake of learning the basics of the game, we are creating two videos. Combat with units, this video, followed by spells and abilities. Let us begin. What you need to play is one standard deck of cards per player, including 2 jokers per deck, the Strataugury manual, and some way to track health. We are using Strataugury tokens here, but you can also use coins or paper and pencil. Strataugury can be played with 1 to 4 players, but we are only going to cover the classic 2-player game in this video. The draw deck is the cards you have not drawn to your hand yet, which, at the beginning of the game, will be all 54 cards in the deck. It should be kept face down during the game, hidden from both you and your opponent. Card suit, color, and value are important when casting spells and summoning units. Red cards include diamonds and hearts. Black cards include spades and clubs. We'll refer to numbered cards, 2 through 10, as runic, and non-numbered cards, jacks, queens, kings, and aces, as royal. Jokers are considered wild, and can take the place of any other card used for mana, spells, characters, etc. At the beginning of the game, each player pulls the top 10 cards from their respective draw deck to create their initial hand. At the beginning of each turn, you pull a single card from your draw deck and place it into your hand. When you end your turn, you can have at most 10 cards in your hand. If you end up with more than 10, you'll need to choose which to discard so that you only have 10 and place them into your discard pile, which we call the dump. There is an additional discard pile, the graveyard, which is specifically reserved for dead characters. The dump and graveyard together form the wasteland, which we will revisit a bit later. Once per turn, you can select 1 or 2 cards to place as a single mana into your mana source. Mana is the currency spent to summon units, cast spells, draw additional cards, and perform other actions. A single odd runic card, 3, 5, 7, or 9, 2 even runic cards of the same suit, for example, 4 of clubs and 6 of clubs, or a matching pair of even runic cards, for example, 2 8s, can be placed as a single mana into the player's mana source. Once placed, they are available for immediate use. To use mana, it is either turned, indicated by rotating it horizontally, or burned, which means it is placed in the dump, depending on what the action requires. Turned mana cannot be turned again or burned until the player's next turn, when it is unturned and available to be used again. The last 2 components are the battlefield and player health. The battlefield is where all units are placed when they are summoned and should be visible to all players. Player health starts at 30 and is tracked using some kind of counter visible to all. The goal of the game is to defeat your opponent by causing their health to reach 0. They do this by building an army. Each player is able to summon mighty soldiers and imposing structures to do battle with their opponent. We generically refer to all of these elements as units when placed on the battlefield. Soldiers are units that include characters and creatures. Structures are units that include walls and palisades. We will now cover the basics of each of these unit types. Standard characters are summoned to the battlefield to defend a player and attack other players. In order to summon a standard character, a player must place a royal card or joker from their hand on the battlefield, along with at least 1 AD card placed upon them, and turn the mana required. Attack defense, or AD cards, are runic and determine the value the character attacks and defends with. Think of it as their strength on the battlefield. A character's suit and type is determined by the royal card used to summon them, which also determines their color. If the AD card is the same suit as the characters, then it is added at full value. For example, an 8 of spades on a king of spades gives the character 8 AD. If the AD card is not the same suit as the character, then it is added at half value, rounded up. For example, a 9 of diamonds on a queen of clubs is worth 5 AD. The exception to this rule is when the character is a weapon master who is summoned with a joker, in which case all AD cards are added at full value regardless of suit. Weapon masters are considered colorless, neither red nor black. If a character reaches a current AD of 0, they are killed and sent to the graveyard. Each standard character is assigned a specific number of AD slots, which determines how many AD cards can be placed upon them to contribute to their current and maximum AD. When summoning a standard character, at least one of the mana turned must be the same suit as the characters. This rule does not apply to weapon masters. If all of the turned mana match the character's suit, they become stalwart, which means that the character permanently gains an additional AD slot. Note that weapon masters cannot be stalwart because they have no suit. In order to indicate that a standard character is stalwart, their royal card should be rotated horizontally when placed on the battlefield. Characters cannot perform standard attacks until after the turn they are initially summoned. They are, however, immediately able to block. AD cards can be added to empty slots in later turns, but the attack value is not applied until the end of the player's turn. The defense value, however, is applied immediately. For example, if a player places a 5 AD card on a knight with current AD of 12, the knight will only deal 12 damage while attacking that turn. However, it would take at least 17 damage to kill them. If they don't take damage that turn, they'll have a current AD of 17 once the owner's turn comes around again. Structures are units that can be summoned to the battlefield to defend the player. They cannot perform standard attacks, but, unlike soldiers, they are able to block multiple standard attacks at once. Each structure starts with a defense value based on its type, which is considered its maximum defense. When a structure is first summoned, its current defense is set to its maximum defense. If a structure reaches a current defense of 0, it is destroyed and placed in the dump. Walls are structures that are used purely for defensive purposes. They can block standard attacks but do no harm to their attackers. In other words, they have an attack value of 0. There is no mana cost for summoning a wall, but it requires that a matching pair of royal cards from the player's hand must be placed on the battlefield. A pair of jacks creates a wooden wall with a defense value of 10. Palisades are structures adorned with outward-facing spikes that deal damage to those it blocks. There is no mana cost for summoning a palisade, but it requires that 3 matching royal cards from the player's hand be placed on the battlefield. 3 kings create a stone palisade with a defense value of 40 and attack value of 12. A palisade deals damage to its attackers equal to its attack value, which is never altered regardless of its current defense. For example, if a character is blocked by a stone palisade that has a current defense of 27, the character will take 12 damage even though the palisade has been damaged. Structures are considered colorless units in regard to spells and rules where specified. Also, during their owner's turn, they can be repaired by placing 2 matching runic cards into the dump. This increases the structure's current defense by the sum of the cards, not to exceed its maximum defense. For example, 2 6s would repair 12 points of defense. Creatures are minions acquired by chance and possess distinct abilities. They are considered soldiers and units in regard to spells and rules where specified. In order to summon a creature, the player must perform a spawn attempt by turning 5 mana and revealing the top card from their draw deck. If the revealed card is runic or a joker, it is successfully summoned and is placed on the battlefield with its current and maximum AD determined by the card's value, also determining the creature's type and color. For example, a kobold begins with a current and maximum AD of 3. If a joker is revealed, it is considered a dragon, with a current and maximum AD of 15, or any other creature if desired, as a joker is wild. However, if the revealed card is royal, it is shuffled back into the draw deck and the player cannot perform a spawn attempt again without turning 5 more mana. Each of the 10 creatures has a unique ability that can be exercised. Some abilities are exercised automatically due to a condition being met, whereas others are exercised through the ability exercising action, which we will cover in the next video. Like characters, creatures cannot perform standard attacks until after the turn they are initially summoned. They are, however, immediately able to block. When a creature dies, it is placed in the dump. So far, we have covered mana, characters, structures, and creatures. To gain a better understanding of these concepts, refer to the tables at the back of the Strataugury manual. Now that we've described the basic components and units, we will perform a playthrough facing a single opponent. Our primary goal is to reduce the opponent's health to 0 by summoning units to attack them. We will be using special Strataugury tokens for clarity, but they are not necessary to play the game. The game begins with each player revealing a random card in their deck. The higher value goes first. Each player then shuffles and draws 10 cards to create their hand. At the beginning of the game, if we don't like the cards in our hand, we can reshuffle and instead draw 9. We can keep doing this until we draw 1 card at the beginning of the game. A player's turn starts by drawing a card off the top of their draw deck and adding it to their hand. Once per turn, you can add 1 mana to your mana source. We will put this 3 of clubs in our mana source. We are unable to do anything else, so we will end our turn. Players cannot end their turn if they have more than 10 cards in their hand. In that case, they would choose the least valuable card or cards to discard into the dump, so that they only have 10 in their hand. We don't have more than 10 cards, so we are worthy to end our turn. The opponent draws their card, places a mana into their mana source, and also ends their turn. A full round has passed, which is measured from our turn to the beginning of our next turn. Now we will draw a card and place a pair of 2s into our mana source as a single mana. Since we have enough mana and the right cards, we are able to summon a Footman standard character. We'll summon the Footman by turning 2 mana like so, and placing a Jack from our hand along with a 9 of diamonds, its AD card. Remember that AD stands for Attack Defense, which is both the strength and health of the character. When summoning a standard character, at least 1 mana must match the suit of the character's royal card. Since our pair of 2s may count as either diamonds or hearts, we have a match to go with the Jack of Diamonds. The character's color is determined by its royal card, so this Footman is considered red. This Footman has a current and maximum AD of 9, which we will indicate with counters. If the AD card suit did not match that of the character's royal card, it would have been counted at half value, rounded up. For example, if this were a 9 of clubs instead, he would have a current and maximum AD of 5. Now both of our mana are turned, which means that we cannot use them again this turn. Since a character cannot perform a standard attack in the same turn they are summoned, we will declare the end of our turn. The opponent places a second mana and ends their turn. We will draw our card, place a third mana, and perform Derivation. Derivation is a way to draw more cards from the draw deck after the initial card draw. In order to perform Derivation, you must first turn 2 mana, and then mana equal to the number of cards you wish to draw. So, we will turn 3 mana to draw 1 card. If we had 5 mana, we could turn them all and draw 3 extra cards. Our Footman is ready for battle, and our opponent has no defenses, so we shall perform a standard attack by declaring which of our units are attacking. Players can only perform 1 standard attack per turn, so we will declare that our Footman is attacking. The defending player has no choice but to take the damage on their health, which leaves them at 21. Before we end our turn, we should summon a bit more defense just in case. We will take 2 kings from our hand and place them on the battlefield as a stone wall with a defense of 30. Walls cannot attack, but are able to block multiple units at once, while soldiers such as our Footmen can only block 1 unit at a time. To illustrate more interesting battle mechanics, let's skip ahead a bit by jumping a few more rounds into the game. As you can see, the opponent has several units out and a banded palisade, as is indicated by the 3 queens. It is our turn, and we have 6 unturned mana. We shall perform a spawn attempt in the hope of summoning a creature. We must turn 5 mana, then reveal the top card of our draw deck. This is where the risk comes in. If the card is runic or a joker, it will be summoned as a creature. If it is a royal, however, we must shuffle it back into the draw deck, and nothing happens. We have essentially wasted 5 mana. We shall reveal our card, which is an 8. This is fantastic news, because an 8 is a giant spider. It will start with 8 AD, which is determined by its card value, and it is considered black because it is an 8 of spades. Since the opponent has a palisade which will damage our soldiers if we attack, it's best we end our turn. The opponent draws their next card and indicates they are going to perform a standard attack toward us by declaring all of their attackers at once. They declare that their Amazon, Paladin, and Goblin are attacking. Now, we choose who blocks which attack and in what order. Our wall will first block the Amazon and then the Goblin, which destroys the wall as its defense is now 0. The giant spider will block the Paladin, and they trade damage determined by their current AD. The Paladin has a current AD of 18 and the giant spider a current AD of 8. The Paladin will take 8 damage, reducing him to a current AD of 10. The giant spider will take 18 damage, which kills it, so it gets placed in the dump. However, the giant spider has an ability called Tangling Webs, in which anyone who blocks or is blocked by the giant spider cannot perform standard attacks or block for 1 round. This is important information, so we will mark that ability just so we remember that this dreadful paladin is now entangled in webs. Rounds are handled a little differently when it's measured by a condition being met automatically, so this paladin will not be able to perform a standard attack or block until the end of its owner's next turn. Now it is our turn. We're going to perform a standard attack with our footman. The opponent selects the Banded Palisade to block, which inflicts 9 damage on the palisade, but also drops our Jack to a current AD of 0. He is killed and sent to the graveyard, which you might recall is the special discard pile in the Wasteland just for dead characters, separate from the dump. We shall turn 4 mana to summon a knight, a character represented by a king, and has 3 AD slots. However, we are able to summon this character with all mana that matches the character's suit, so he is considered stalwart, which means he gains an additional AD slot, giving him a total of 4. This is indicated by rotating his royal card horizontally. We shall add 2 AD cards for now, but we can fill the remaining slots in later turns. As a reminder, if we were to add an AD card after his initial summoning, the attack value would not be applied until the end of the turn. The defense value, however, would be applied immediately, so if we added another card to this 12 AD knight later in the game, he would still only deal 12 damage that turn if he performed a standard attack, but he would be able to take 19 damage before dying. Also, if he is not attacked in that round, he will be able to attack with a full 19 AD at the beginning of our next turn. There are a few different ways that a game can end. The typical way is that a player's health will be reduced to 0, either by attacking units or spells, causing them to immediately lose. Alternately, if at any point a player runs out of cards, meaning their draw deck is empty, and they cannot pull a card at the beginning of their turn, they immediately lose the game. On the other hand, a player wins the game if they increase their health to 60, which is considered Ascension, regardless of the status of the other players. Increasing a player's health is accomplished through spells and abilities. Previously, we mentioned Derivation, which is turning mana to draw cards, but we also have Disintegration, in which you can burn 2 unturned mana to take 1 random card from your dump and shuffle it into your draw deck. This option can be especially helpful if your draw deck is empty. Just remember to perform this action before your next turn. If circumstances look truly grim, a player always has the right to resign at any point during the game. You have been presented with quite a bit of knowledge, overwhelming perhaps, but as long as you have the manual at your side, you should have no trouble navigating the game. We've covered the very core of combat in basic gameplay, just to give you a taste of the game. In the next video, we shall cover spells and creature abilities, as well as optional elements of basic gameplay, which bring greater nuance to Strataugury. Also, be on the lookout for an advanced gameplay video which introduces supernaturals, monuments, heroes, new creatures, and amulets, a myriad of fantastical things to add to the battlefield. Thank you for watching. May the Allos guide you.